Audi has made its first move in the F1 driver market by signing up veteran Nico Hulkenberg. It's a deal that will have a big impact on the 2025 F1 silly season, primarily in the back half of the grid, but also in terms of the key decision being made by one big-name driver. Hulkenberg's contract reunites him with the Sauber team he drove for with distinction back in 2013, and with team CEO Andreas Seidel, boss of the Porsche sports car team, when Hulkenberg took his famous victory at Le Mans in 2015 alongside Nick Tandy and Earl Bamber. It's described as a multi-year deal that will keep him at the team beyond 2025. That means it's most likely a classic 2+1 deal, so 2 years locked in and some kind of option for the third. Hulkenberg's strong performances for Haas since his full-time F1 comeback at the start of 2023 have earned him the seat, while it's also fair to say that Audi was keen to sign a German driver. But as Seidel says, Hulkenberg's experience will be valuable in helping build up a team with big ambitions, but a long way to go. Crucially, it also gives Audi some breathing space when it comes to the identity of its other driver, and that's because its number one target, Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, is taking his time. He's been offered a big money multi-year deal to be Audi's spearhead. However, he's understandably keen to stay in race-winning machinery, so has resolved to wait in case an opportunity comes up at Red Bull or Mercedes. And it's going to take some time for that to play out. By signing Hulkenberg, Audi has one of its targets in place and can give Sainz the time he needs. While there would be a risk of fielding a weakened lineup if it dithered on both seats, Audi can be confident there will be good fallback options available later in the year, whether that's the Alpine drivers, a new deal for Valtteri Bottas, or perhaps even a move for Williams ace Alex Albon. Sauber's ongoing transformation into the Audi Works team for 2026 has made it a powerful player in F1's driver market. For a team that has scored the least points since the start of last season to be in the hunt for a driver of Sainz's calibre, the only non-Red Bull driver to win a race in the past 18 months, shows how big its ambitions and pockets are. Red Bull's Helmut Marko has described the offer Audi made to Sainz as lucrative and has portrayed Sauber as a disruptive force in the so-called F1 silly season. The team is happy to be regarded as that, with Sauber managing director Alessandro Aluni Bravi recently declaring his team a real player in the driver market. Sauber is keen to refresh its driver lineup completely, so while it's not impossible one of its incumbent drivers, Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, could stay on, it's extremely unlikely. But anyone who is eyeing up the other Audi seat must wait for Sainz to make his choice, and it could be quite some time before that happens. Sauber is in an unusual position given it's a back half of the grid team that has emerged as a big player, but the bottom line is that in the short to medium term it's not a seat that has massive appeal. Of course, every Formula 1 driver dreams of a seat in a top team that promises race wins, a shot at the World Championship and a big bucks contract, but few have that opportunity, meaning they are forced to have more modest ambitions. That's the difference between a drive someone wants and one they'll settle for. For some, it's about finding the most upwardly mobile option that could emerge as a frontrunner in the future, which is exactly what the Audi Sauber project is. For others, it's about a team that offers the least worst package in the short term so they can show their skills and perhaps earn a better move next time round. But there's also those who are clinging desperately to their place in F1 and battling to avoid the nightmare scenario of being left standing when the music stops. Then there's the flip side of that coin, the rising stars who are pushing for a race seat that will therefore act as career enders for the unlucky ones. This storyline is nothing new, but the 2025 driver market is particularly frenzied. While there was not a single change from the end of last season to the start of this, the grid at the beginning of 2025 will look very different. And things are moving even earlier than normal this season. The timing and volatility of the driver market is primarily defined by the big moves. This year that means Lewis Hamilton heading to Ferrari. Such high-profile deals have a seismic impact on the driver market, with every player in some way affected by the ripples created. And each subsequent move creates another disturbance that makes the driver market incredibly unstable. In that regard, Hulkenberg's move comes strangely out of sequence. That's because his fellow drivers down the grid are waiting for the big teams to make their decisions. So that means whether or not Red Bull presses on with Sergio Perez, as appears likely, and Mercedes choosing between rookie Kimi Antonelli and Sainz for the seat, if the longest of long shots doesn't come off and it can't somehow land Max Verstappen. As team principal Toto Wolff said recently, Verstappen is a trigger point that will lead to other driver market dominoes falling. And that will have an effect even for the minor teams. So let's take a look at the state of play elsewhere in the back half of the grid. And with RB part of its own detached ecosystem with Red Bull Racing, something we discussed in detail in a recent video, that means Sauber, Williams, Alpine and Haas. Alpine is one of the few works teams, but its miserable start to 2024 means it's far less attractive than it should be. Both drivers might want out. Esteban Ocon is on Audi's shortlist and could be a contender should Sainz say no, but teammate Pierre Gasly could also be available for 2025. Gasly's management has been sounding out other teams, including Williams, but he's giving Alpine the chance to make progress and convince him that it's the right place to commit his future to. Alpine should aim to keep hold of at least one of its current drivers, and right now, that seems more likely to be Gasly, but it's no foregone conclusion it can keep either. Ocon has been the stronger driver so far this season, but like Gasly, his management is also looking around for alternatives. That includes Williams, a team that is casting the net far and wide in its driver conversations, given the fact that Logan Sargent is almost certain to be replaced for next year, if not earlier. And while Williams has an option on Albon, it's not yet picked it up. His future could depend on a new long-term deal for 2025 and beyond being agreed, as Williams is keen for a long-term commitment from Albon and could let him go if his future for 2026 and beyond is elsewhere. Alpine's hopes of keeping one or both of its current drivers will depend on its performances improving, and fast. Right now, there are 4 drivers whose F1 careers appear in most mortal peril. They are Sauber pairing Bottas and Zhou, Haas veteran Kevin Magnussen and Sargent at Williams. It's difficult to see more than 2 of those 4 drivers being on the grid next year, and potentially all 4 could fall. Neither Bottas nor Zhou is likely to hang on to the remaining available Sauber seat, so would need to find a berth elsewhere. Bottas is unquestionably the strongest of these 4 and has driven well this season despite pit stop problems and unreliability, meaning he's yet to score. He says he hopes that teams will see he's performing well. However, at 34, he won't be seen by anyone as a long-term prospect, and he may also have to revise his pay expectations to secure a seat. After all, his current Sauber deal was signed when he was fresh out of Mercedes as a 10-time Grand Prix winner. But he still stands a chance of clinging on because of his experience and pace, making him a valid target for Alpine, Williams and Haas. Zhou looks in more trouble as despite performing incredibly in F1, he's generally just behind Bottas on pace. That in itself is no bad thing given Bottas' experience and the fact that, when alongside Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, he outqualified his legendary teammate around 1/3 of the time. But it still means Zhou is in danger of sliding off the grid. Zhou has had more than his fair share of bad luck and also makes minimal mistakes and works well with the team. He appeals because of the potential of the Chinese market, which means he has some commercial value. However, it seems that if he is to stay in F1, he would need to rely on finding a seat at either Haas or Alpine, where he was once a junior driver, given Williams doesn't appear to be interested. Sargent's chances of staying in F1 are minimal, and he must turn his flashes of pace into results for Williams to have any hope of changing that. You'd have said the same about Kevin Magnussen a few months ago, but he has performed well for Haas and, crucially, impressed Io Komatsu with his work rate, having become frustrated too many times last year. Magnussen's hopes of staying on as the experienced hand have increased with Hulkenberg's departure. However, if Haas were to opt to bring in another experienced hand, that would be bad news for Magnussen, given the presence of a certain rising star. There's one blindingly obvious rookie driver who will be on the grid for 2025 and most likely at Haas, and that's because he's already made a big impression in F1, and that's Ollie Bearman. Bearman took a sensational 7th place on his debut as a stand-in at Ferrari in Saudi Arabia, despite missing Friday. Even before that, he was booked in for 6 FP1 outings for Haas this year, starting at Imola, and was well placed to land the seat, but now he seems a dead cert. The other much vaunted rookie is his Prema Formula 2 teammate Antonelli. He's likely to race for either Mercedes or Williams next year, assuming all goes well in his F1 tests and in F2 in the coming months. There's even suggestions he could make his F1 debut for Williams later this year. Both Antonelli and Bearman should therefore be on the grid in 2025. But there could be more. If Alpine has a vacancy or 2, then reserve driver Jack Doohan is well placed to land a drive. He's not racing this year, but is completing testing mileage in old Alpine machinery to sharpen his skills, as well as doing simulator work. He's quick, as he proved in the junior categories, and his intense approach is making a good impression on Alpine. As Ocon says, he deserves an F1 shot. Beyond that, there are others who could yet force themselves into contention. Felipe Drugovich is Aston Martin's F1 reserve and will be pushing for a chance, while Sauber has reigning F2 champion Théo Pourchaire and current points leader Zane Maloney on its books. There's others who might yet hope to become players in the F1 driver market, but for now, all anyone can do is wait and see what happens with the top teams. Only once that happens can those lower down the pecking order make their moves and pick up the scraps by taking the drives no top driver wants. That's just the way it works in the cutthroat world of the F1 driver market.